Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to an experiment. In my Dream SMP video, I talked a little about the FINIVERSE, more specifically, a couple characters from that universe that represented multiple facets of the concept of entropy. You guys seem to really enjoy that video, or maybe that's just because I used Technoblade's name in the title, but in any case, I really enjoyed talking about some of that stuff, so I wanted to take some time to aggressively toot my own horn and talk some more about the FINIVERSE. So welcome to the first episode of the FINIVERSE Files, where I break down the concepts from my various works of fiction that aren't out yet in videos like this. Today we're going to be starting with the FINIVERSE itself, the overarching ideas, laws, and concepts that make my multiverse what it is. I must first address the name. The name FINIVERSE feels super egotistical and self-inserty. That's because it is, but let me give you my in-universe explanation for the name, which involves a bit of history. At the end of the last multiverse, because of course there was one before this one, beings of impossible power were engaged in war. The All-Devourer and Azathoth of the Beyond, along with some others, sought to bring about entropy's reign and destroy the multiverse for good. They were opposed by, well, everyone who didn't want to be destroyed, but those people were led by Caliphus, the Crimson Swordsman, Elinja the Graceful, and the Architect, the creator of every multiverse, whose true name has been lost to time. The All-Devourer and Azathoth eventually won, destroying the final reality and the last multiverse with it. But the Architect was able to stave off entropy with one last sacrifice. Using the last of his life energy, the Architect captured the entropy that was consuming the last remaining deities and placed it into two humanoid forms that became known as Null and Void, trapping them within the Null Void and allowing the multiverse to regrow. With that, the Architect died, and so this multiverse is called the FINIVERSE because it's finite. He creates all the multiverses, and he can't make another. Jumping to the present, have some terminologies. That was my name explanation, now have some more names that I have to explain. Universe, dimension, reality, and plane are all used interchangeably to refer to a single piece of the FINIVERSE. These all mean exactly what they sound like. A single universe, which is already incomprehensibly vast, makes up just a tiny portion of the FINIVERSE, and there are theoretically infinite universes. The real estate value of the entire FINIVERSE is off the charts. All of reality is fractalized because even outside of the FINIVERSE, there's something called the Omniverse, which this multiverse slots into, along with every other work of fiction and possible reality ever created by anyone. This has little to no bearing on the FINIVERSE, however, and basically only exists to make it possible that some works of fiction destroy entire multiverses, which can still coexist alongside the FINIVERSE, because when the concept of a multiverse is infinite, eventually a reality will recreate works of fiction, and logically every work of fiction must exist somewhere in the universe, but some of those works of fiction have the multiverse itself being destroyed, which doesn't work with the FINIVERSE canon, so they are destroyed within their own multiverses, which all exist within the Omniverse. Capiche? When the FINIVERSE began, there was but one reality, which, despite being the first, is for some reason called Reality 76. Every variance within that reality creates a new reality, from errant molecules entering the atmosphere during the Earth's formation to what you chose to eat for breakfast this morning. It's a butterfly effect. So 76 was the first, but every single variance within Reality 76 splits off into a new reality. Incidentally, because of this, Reality 76 is the only dimension where it's possible to fully, perfectly predict the future. Because it's, in a way, the ideal reality, the one where everything plays out exactly the way it's supposed to. If anything plays out in a different way, it sparks a fork. Other future prediction methods are also possible in other realities, but those are a lot less reliant on magic and typically require a lot of math and social/predictive sciences. They are way harder than simple soothsaying, which is what I'm specifically referring to as used in Reality 76. But Finn, if there are infinite universes, how do you keep track? Asked the completely hypothetical audience stand-in who probably cares way more than any real person does about this video. Well, I'm glad you asked. There are indeed infinite realities, but most of them are incredibly similar to other realities. Sure, there's a reality inhabited 100% by sentient toasters that somehow sprang off from 76, but there's also one exactly like this world, except you had a bagel for breakfast this morning instead of a waffle. Of course, this could be the butterfly that, since it takes you slightly longer to apply cream cheese than it does syrup, causes you to leave the house 15 seconds later, thereby getting hit by a bus that didn't hit you in reality 347, meaning you lived long enough to be diagnosed with and subsequently cure leukemia, leading humanity into a medical golden age where we've assembled a full Dyson sphere by the year 2500. But typically, such small actions don't have such dramatic consequences. If a minute difference doesn't cause a change big enough, it's nested under each baseline reality. A baseline reality is a nested set of incredibly similar realities. Within baseline reality 76, there are infinite, slightly different versions that are all similar enough to be counted as a single reality. You'd think this might be difficult for multiversal travelers who want to travel to a specific reality, but conveniently for them, they don't really get a choice. Most methods of multiversal travel are only refined enough to select different baseline realities, because that's exactly how refined they need to be. No one cares if you land in reality 76-K3759 or reality 76-K1360. The differences between them are so minuscule that it's irrelevant. This then begs the question of who decides what differences are big enough to justify categorizing a reality as a different one. Conveniently, it's the same people that numbers realities in the first place. Yeah, that's right. Nature honestly really doesn't give a crap about numbering itself, so it needs mortals to do that for it. Which brings us into the Hub. The Hub is the greatest information gathering organization in the FINIVERSE. Operating from an 8-pointed space station from within Reality Zero, it's a massive library and set of archives where thousands from across the FINIVERSE gather and learn. The Hub Council, a board of beings in control of the entire organization, determine the numbering of each baseline reality. And a lot of their decisions seem weird or nonsensical, but they've never explained their methods, and so until somebody can find out whether they're just randomly throwing darts to determine the numbers, they will remain beyond reproach. There's a lot more to the Hub than that, but they're getting their own episode later. So for now, let's discuss what surrounds the Hub. Reality Zero is also known as the Null Void, which I mentioned earlier, and is unique among dimensions. Reality Zero is basically space on a larger and far emptier scale, an endless featureless abyss of monochromatic hues. The most common metaphor for the Finiverse as a whole is an ocean filled with bubbles. Small, fragile spheres that can divide and pop whenever, and these are all our dimensions. The ocean around these spheres is reality zero, the null void. It is not in itself a plane, it is I hesitate to say space, because physical space kind of stops working in the null void, as does time, but it's hard to describe it any other way. It's a space that surrounds these bubbles, these realities. Just like a literal ocean, it is cold, yet life flourishes in tiny pockets, which are those bubbles. Also, like the sea, it's full of monsters. Don't look down. We'll discuss all of these more in future episodes, but now it's time to take a look at a bunch of miscellaneous Finiverse ideas in rapid succession. Power level. Insert obligatory Dragon Balls meme here, but power level is an important concept within the Finiverse. The Hub assigns these to every single thing, living or non-living, within the Finiverse. Like reality designations, they can often seem arbitrarily assigned, but tend to be pretty accurate. They're measured by how many average, untrained humans one can defeat in a fight to the death before going down. Although there's a bit more to it than that. Beings with abilities that are less combat applicable somehow get an accurate reading, so we can only assume the Hub has a more nuanced system than just taking notes on infinite duels. The average person has a PL of 1, because one average person versus one average person. That's kind of how it works. A trained soldier has a PL of a dozen or so, and someone with magic can easily reach into the hundreds. Once you hit the 1,000 threshold, you are officially considered a deity. Being a deity doesn't grant you any extra magic powers or anything. It's just a term for beings above 1,000 power level. 10k is a greater deity, and 100k is a cosmic deity. These labels don't apply to objects, otherwise every super weapon would be a god. Time. Time is weird. Well, time is weird everywhere, but when you travel between dimensions, time is even weirder. Within the null void, time doesn't really exist, and to get between realities, you have to enter the null void. Again, space doesn't really work, but enter in quotes. Depending on your reality traversal method, you could theoretically end up traveling through time as much as you do through, well, not space, but something nonetheless. Many reality traversal devices, especially those that rely on technology rather than magic, are specifically calibrated to spit you out at a time with similar context to your own. If you leave Reality 76 in 2023, you will end up in whatever reality you're going to in a time that has a similar level of technological advancement, unless you specifically request to be set somewhere else, which a lot of people do. If you choose, you could just as easily pop in at any time within another dimension. You can also do the inverse, travel realities, by traveling through time. Because whenever you time travel within your own dimension, which is a thing some people do, you're actually creating a new splinter reality within your baseline reality that starts at the moment you arrive. Time travel is typically not very useful because of this. You cannot change the past when it creates a new reality that is then your present. Time travel is also mostly avoided in the FINIVERSE to keep things simple, both by the characters and me not wanting to keep track of stupid crap. The higher order. Wow, Finn, that sure sounds like a lot of rules. How on infinite earths are you going to be able to incorporate that into your story while allowing your characters to know and interact with these rules? Thank you, hypothetical stand-in. I'm glad you asked. The higher order is the FINIVERSE's version of the laws of physics. It's what can be summarized as the laws that govern the multiverse. The higher order applies to every single reality, although it can also be supplemented by things like magic and other things that only exist in some realities. Unlike the laws of physics, the higher order is one complete piece of information and can be assembled into one cohesive tapestry. It was first assembled by James Talbot, see the thing in the cracks, and it's basically an instruction booklet of pictograms and special runes that tell you how the universe works. Aspects of it, known as seals, can also be used to break laws of reality. If that sounds interesting, I wrote a short story about it that's linked in the description. Dimensional planes. One last thing, the vast majority of the FINIVERSE takes place within the fourth dimension, not to be confused with Reality 4. This means that, in addition to length, width, and depth, we have time. There are other FINIVERSEs that exist above and below us that fill in those other dimensions. Because within the metaphor of the FINIVERSE being an ocean filled with bubbles, imagine these other geometrical dimensions as being other oceans that exist above and below us. Some of them are still, and some of them aren't deep, and some of them aren't wide. But the most relevant of these is the fifth dimension, which has length, width, depth, time, and for which there is no word in any mortal language. Within the fifth dimension, again, see the thing in the cracks, there's a whole slew of Lovecraftian monsters and horrors beyond comprehension. For more on that, read The Thing in the Cracks, or check out the episode I'll be making soon on the fifth conclusion. I think this kind of went over everything I wanted to talk about regarding the basic concepts of the FINIVERSE. Join us next time when we discuss some of the nuances of the hub's operation, and if any of this sounds interesting, please leave a comment letting me know what to talk about next. Thank you for watching all the way through. This is probably one of the videos on my channel I'm most proud of, along with, like, Realm of Realms, because as much as I love just general gaming, anyone can kind of game, and it's my creative writing that I'm really fortunate to be able to share to people, and if you took the time to experience that and you're interested and you're like, wow, this sounds cool, please let me know. And if any aspect of this sounds particularly interesting, leave a comment. This was a very, very basic overview. A lot of it is going to start becoming way more specific. Like, that little snippet about the history of the FINIVERSE and how the last one ended, how that was almost like a history presentation. A lot of it's going to be like that, with specific people and characters and summations of events. But for these early episodes, it's all establishing shots, and it's going to be going over the world. I'm excited for the FINIVERSE files. I hope you are too. Let me know what you think of the theme song. I composed it myself. Goodbye, beautiful people.